Okay. So fasting should be accompanied by a few things. And one of these things is fasting of the tongue. We need to control our tongues. Now, I understand that you had a topic on this not too long ago, so I'm not going to go too much into controlling the tongue, but we really have to be careful what we say. We need to control it. Okay? Many of us just say things, and we really need to be careful that whatever it is that comes out of our mouth goes past our brain and past our hearts. You have to think, is my words hurting anybody? And Jesus is very clear on this. By your words you will be justified, and by your words you will be condemned. So be careful. Once you take a word out of your mouth, you can't change it. It's too late. We need to be careful what it is we say. We need to fast from talking, because talking is just full of mistakes. We try to control that. So one part that we need to control during fast is what we say. The other thing we need to control is our mind, what we think. We need to focus. I do this all the time, and I'm sure most of you do, is that during the liturgy we lose focus. We are not completely thinking about Christ. He is not the most important thing, and we tend to think about many other things, and any distraction will pull us away. We need to control that. And some people might say it's very hard for me to do that. I just can't focus. I find it difficult to do that. It does take training. But I want to ask you a question. Bishoy here, he's got a business, I think. Now his business grows and he's become very successful, and he desired to hire a lot of people. And then he decides that he needs an assistant. So he hires an assistant, a young girl. Now this young girl is actually going around talking to this person and to this person and to this person, and she's neglecting to do her job. What's Bishoy going to do? Bishoy is going to call her in and say, listen here, your contract says you need to do this job and you're not doing it. Okay? You need to fix your ways. Now we need to do that. We are actually in control of our minds, but we let it go. We let it wander. Who's in charge? We have control over all of our senses, but we choose not to control them. I'm not saying it's easy. It's hard. But we have to focus. We have to think God is important in our lives. He is important for eternity. My eternity is important. Therefore, I am going to do what it takes to change myself. We don't have a problem focusing on TV. We don't have a problem focusing on lots of things that happen around us in the church. There is so many ladies that come to church and they look around and they see who's dressed nicely and who's wearing what and who's talking in the church. All these things. But we're not focused on God. Why? Is He not important? Finally, the third thing is that we need to control our desires. Now, this is not an easy thing, and I look around me at you guys and I feel sorry for you. I really do. I feel sorry for you, because as young people, there is so many desires and there is so many attractions out there. There is sexual desires, there is desire to make a family, there is desires to feel loved, there is desire to feel important. All of these desires, and they are strong desires. But you also have a desire to get eternity. So you've got your carnal man pushing you in one direction, and your spiritual man is pushing you in another direction. And very often, your carnal man is stronger. because it's not easy. It's not easy. We really need to ask ourselves, what is important in our lives? What is really important? You know, you've got all these desires now, but eventually you guys will get married, okay? And after that, for the next 40 or 50 years during your marriage life, okay, you're going to have one very strong focus, which is making a lot of money. And the more money you make, the more your desire, and that is where your heart is. Where your wealth is, that is where your heart goes. So you get this strong desire to make more and more and more money. Now, Jesus recognized this. In fact, this is the one thing that Christ compares himself to in the Bible. Okay? You've got to make a choice. You've got to make a choice. Do you choose money or do you choose God? In Luke chapter 12, there is this man that comes up to Jesus and he says to him, in verse 13, he says, "Teacher, tell my brother to divide the inheritance with me." And Jesus said to him, "What's this got to do with me? This is not important. You're focused on things of the earth. You're focused on things that are for a short time period. My focus is eternity." And he says to him, "Who made me a judge over you? Basically, go away." Now, Jesus, on many occasions in the Bible, he doesn't concern himself with certain aspects. But one of these things is this guy. He wants the money. Then Jesus says, "Take heed and beware of covetousness. For one's life does not consist in the abundance of the things he possesses." Now, this is a very nice verse, which I think most of us neglect to think about. Okay? One's life does not consist in the abundance of possessions, of his possessions. And it doesn't matter what these possessions are. It could be money, it could be wealth, it could be fame, it could be a beautiful wife or a handsome husband, whatever it is. It's not relevant. It's all a chasing after the wind. It's all a lie. It's all a lie. Then he says to him, he gives them a parable. He says, there is this rich man, and he's planted his crops, and he's got an abundance of crops coming out. Okay? So what does he say? He says to himself, "I will knock down my barns and build greater ones, and say to myself, enjoy life." And God replies to him and he says, "You fool, this night your life will be taken away from you. And all of what you have prepared, what will it be good for?" We've got to keep it in mind that we can actually die at any moment. It doesn't matter how young you are. I know people in their teenage years and they die. We're not in control of that. And so he says at the end, "So is he who lays up treasures," this is in verse 21, Luke 12, verse 21. "So is he who lays up treasures for himself and is not rich towards God." So we have to be careful what treasures we lay for ourselves. What is it that controls our desires? Do we have a desire to be rich here on earth? Or is it more important to have the desire? This guy didn't do anything wrong. The one thing he did that was wrong was he didn't think about his eternity. He just didn't think about it. So this is something that we need to work on. We need to fast. We need to control our desires. Now, fasting and quiet time are actually very similar. But quiet time goes a step further. Okay, so fasting, for instance, the first step of fasting, you have to control what you say. In quiet time, you have to silence your tongue. Stop it altogether. Stop talking. Okay? The next thing for fasting is you have to control what you think. With quiet time, you silence your mind. You stop thinking altogether. You just stop it. Complete silence. And finally, you control your heart's desire during fasting, but in quiet time, you silence your heart altogether. And Pope Shenouda's got a very nice saying. He says, silence the mouth, this is during quiet time, silence the mouth to let the mind speak. Silence the mind to let the heart speak. Silence the heart to let God speak. Who wants to hear God? We achieve that during quiet time. Now, many of us think of quiet time as being a boring sort of thing where you sit alone and it's dull. But reality is, quiet time is basically, in essence, it is setting your mind on what is above. Okay? So can we take out Lamentations chapter 3, and it's verse 25 to 29. Okay? Now he's talking here about youth, and he's talking about quiet time. So I'll read that for you. The Lord is good to those who wait for him, to the soul who seeks him. It is good that one should hope and wait quietly for the salvation of the Lord. It is good for a man to bear the yoke in his youth. Let him sit alone and keep silent. If you want to hear God, you have to completely silence everything around you so that he can speak. You know, Elijah, he spent many, many years in quiet time. Years. Not half an hour. Years. He went to the king of Israel, and his name was Ahab at the time, and he said to him, there is not going to be any rain on the land until I say so. He's a powerful man, Elijah. No rain. And then he walks away. And Ahab is chasing after him for 2.5 years. And Elijah is having a quiet time. He is not to be disturbed. He is having a quiet time. And then finally, one of the servants of Ahab, Obidah, he comes to him and he says to him, go and tell Ahab that it's going to pour down rain. But first, I want you to meet me on Mount Carmel. And bring the people with you, and bring the priests of Baal. So he goes there with the priests, 400 of them, or 850 altogether. Okay? And they try to, I'm not going to go through the story because you all know it. Okay? So anyway, fire comes down from heaven and eats the sacrifice of Elijah. And then Elijah grabs these 850 people and he executes them. Now, some of you are actually going to Israel, and if you go to Mount Carmel, there is a big statue there of Elijah executing the priests of Baal. And then Ahab goes home to Jezebel, and he tells her what happened. And Jezebel says, she sent a message to Elijah saying to him, may God do so to me and more, if by this time tomorrow you are not as one of these priests. In other words, 24 hours, I'm going to kill you. Now, this was not God's will. So now it's been 24 centuries and Elijah hasn't died yet. But Elijah gets scared. And he runs away. And he fasts. Okay? And then something very interesting happens. We're going to read this from 1 Kings chapter 19. Okay? Chapter 19, verses 11 to 13. Have you got that, Anne-Marie? Okay, so God said to him, "Go out and stand on the mountain before the Lord." You got it? Chapter 19, verse 11 to 13. Then he said, "Go out and stand on the mountain before the Lord. And behold, the Lord passed by, and a great strong wind tore into the mountain and broke the rocks in pieces before the Lord. But the Lord was not in the wind. And after the wind, an earthquake, but the Lord was not in the earthquake. And after the earthquake, a fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire, a still small voice." Now, the fathers of the church have lots and lots of contemplations on this. But in essence, what it comes down to is the wind is the tongue. Silence the tongue. It's not useful to you. The earthquake is the mind. Silence the mind. And the fire is the heart. Okay? So with fasting, we are controlling every aspect of our life. With quiet time, we are stopping it in order to find God. We stop it altogether. Now, the quiet time is actually very important, and it's particularly important to us because Jesus himself spent a lot of time in quiet time. And we read this in the Gospels quite a bit, that he would go alone and he would spend time by himself. Before he appoints the disciples, he went out and spent a night outside by himself in quiet time. Okay? But one incident that comes to mind, which I think is particularly nice, is after he feeds the 5,000. Okay? He sends out the disciples on a boat, and then he dismisses the crowd, and he spends the night in prayer by himself on the mountain. Now you got to bear in mind that Jesus was very, very popular, especially after this miracle. 5,000 are fed, and people want to spend time with him. And he says, "No, I'm going to have my quiet time." None of us have the job that Jesus had to do. There is no way that we are so engrossed in whatever it is that we have to do that we can't spend a few minutes with Christ. Pope Shenouda, he had an enormous amount of work to do. And yet, every week he would spend 3 days in the monastery, quiet time, alone with God. He saw God as being very important, Pope Shenouda. And St. Mary was the same. St. Mary, we don't hear that St. Mary said very much in her lifetime. She was spending most of her time in quiet time with Christ. How wonderful is that? What are the blessings of the quiet time? Okay. The quiet time is a connection with God. So it's a time where you actually, it's a little bit more advanced than prayer. Okay? So you're trying to connect with God. Okay? And you're getting close to God. Okay? And that drives you to holiness. You've got to understand that Christ is the light of the world. Okay? So let's say Anne-Marie is sitting there and she's wearing a very dirty outfit. She's not, but let's say that she is. Okay? And we switch the light off. Nobody's going to realize that she's wearing a dirty outfit. But then we very slowly bring the light a little bit higher. So now you can see a little bit of blotches. And then we bring it even higher, and everybody can see it. So Christ is the light of the world. The closer we get to him, the more we realize how sinful we are, how dirty we are. And the consequence of that is that it brings us to repentance. St. Isaac the Syrian says a quote which Pope Shenouda used to repeat a lot, and it's one of my favorites. Okay? In fact, I'm going to read you another quote of his because it's really nice. He says, anybody who thinks that they can have, that they can repent without prayer is being fooled by the devil. You can't repent on your own. Temptation is too strong. And the desires out there is particularly strong for you guys. If we don't seek God's assistance in prayer, in reading the Bible, in doing all the right things, we're not going to be able to make it. St. Isaac the Syrian says another quote which I particularly like. He said, without the power of your grace, he's talking to God, without the power of your grace, I am quite unable to enter within myself, becoming aware of my stains, and so at the sight of them be able to be still from great distractions. He's basically saying, without getting close to you, I can't see my sins. I can't see them. So the aim of this is that quiet time is a time where you try to get close to God, and that leads you to repentance. And without repentance, there is no salvation. But that is the steps. Okay? And like we read earlier on, if you try and fight desires by yourself, you're not going to make it. Desires are too strong, especially for many of you young people. You've got, I was your age. I had 100 times as much desires then as I do now. There's so many of them, and it's so strong. What do you do? How do you overcome it? Get close to God. That's all you need to do. Now that in itself is not easy, but this is the direction, and it's much easier than struggling on your own. Okay, you also gain humility and strength. And we're going to go to 2 Chronicles chapter 20. I'm not going to read all of this for you, but it's a story about a king, and his name is Jehoshaphat. Okay? Jehoshaphat was one of those really good kings. And one day, three very large kingdoms decide to go up against him. And he's got no hope. He cannot win. So what does he do? He calls for a fast. He calls everybody together and he starts to pray. And his prayer is full of humility. I'm just going to read you one sentence. He says to God, "For we have no power against this great multitude that is coming against us, nor do we know what to do, but our eyes are upon you." Our focus is on you. No matter what our problems are, our focus is you. And the Bible tells us something really strange, is that God causes an ambush for those three kings. And they all end up killing each other. And Jehoshaphat simply walks in. And they take the booty, they take all their gold, they took all their wealth. Okay? How did he walk in? How did he walk in? It's really surprising. Okay? While they're praying, this prophet comes along and he says to him and to the people, not one single person from Israel will die. There is not going to be an arrow shot. You don't need to do anything. So he trusted in God. He had faith. He trusted in him. And he took out his army against these three kings. And what did his army consist of? The singers. They went out singing. And what did they sing? It says, praise the Lord, for his mercy endures forever. Does anybody recognize that? Tasbih. They are singing praises to God because they have faith. They believed. And this is something that we need. But very importantly, is quiet time needs to be associated with humility. And if you are truly humble, you will get strength. In 2 Chronicles chapter 16, verse 9. See if you can get that out. And Maria, are you doing this? Or? Yep. Okay, now this is a very, very nice verse. I never actually noticed it before, but it's very nice. He says, for the eyes of the Lord run to and fro throughout the whole earth, to show himself strong on behalf of those whose heart is loyal to him. God is looking for someone whose heart is loyal to him, and he wants that person because he wants to flex his muscles. He wants to show how strong he is. And he's powerful. Our God is incredibly powerful. He can change the world. And he is looking for someone whose heart is loyal to him. How beautiful is that? Okay, the other thing which is very important, the other benefit of quiet time is that it puts things into perspective. And it makes us tolerant of many hardships. Now, we will run through hardships, but we've got to appreciate that this hardship is only for a very short period. And the reward for that is so big. It's so great. Okay? You're going to feel a little bit of suffering, but be of good cheer. I have overcome the world. There is nobody in this world that suffered as much as Christ, particularly on the cross. Huge suffering. How did he tolerate the suffering? How? How did he tolerate the suffering? What did he do? We find that the answer to that question, I'm referring to Hebrews a lot because we're reading Hebrews at the moment. We're going to go to Hebrews 12, verse 2. And St. Paul here is telling us to do something. He says, look unto Jesus. Look what he's done, and you have to do the same thing. The author and finisher of our faith, who for the joy that was set before him, endured the cross, despising the shame, and has sat down on the right hand of the throne of God. St. Paul is telling us, look at what Jesus did. He endured the suffering. How did he endure the suffering? For the joy that was set before him, he endured the cross. He is looking at the reward. And that is what we need to do. No matter what pleasure we have on this earth, okay, we have to understand that this pleasure is for us and for bad people, not people outside. Everybody. Everybody gets these pleasures. The riches, the family, the wealth, the whatever it is that you consider as desirable. We all get it. But we get something special. And no eye has seen, no ear has heard, and no mind can comprehend what God has prepared for those who love him. And you have to put that into perspective. What is it you want? You want the pleasures of this world, or do you want the reward? If you want the reward, then you have to tolerate whatever it is, because it's only for a short period. This does not equate to eternity. Tolerate it, as Jesus did. And St. Paul is telling us very clearly, follow his example. His eye was on the joys to come. And like I read earlier, Moses his eye, he didn't think that the wealth of Egypt was anything. It's not important. What is important is to be shameful with Christ. That is important, because you get the reward for that. How do we do quiet time? Okay. Now there is no real set rules for quiet time. But reality is, you have to be dedicated. You're not going to achieve anything in this life without hard work. You need to dedicate a time. Now, I was talking to Maria Sawiris a while ago, and she really surprised me, because she wakes up at something like 4 or 4:30 in the morning and goes to the gym, okay? And I thought, wow, before work, this is really hard stuff. Now, she didn't tell me anything else, but my question is, she does that because it's important to her. She wants to be physically fit, and there is nothing wrong with that. That's a good thing, okay? But how many of us place importance on our eternity, on spending time with God? I know that I don't. I don't spend anywhere near as much time as I should. So firstly, we have to be committed. We have to spend time with God. Okay? Now, a hint here is that it's nice to do a hymn with your quiet time, if you feel like it, of course. There is no rules, but a hymn lifts you up. It lifts you up. And I think it's nice, but it's up to you. You have to try to control your senses as much as you can. And you do that by going into a secluded place. If you can, try to go to a secluded place. You can go to, if you've got any place near your house, you can go wherever there is nature, or sea, or a cemetery. I particularly like going to cemeteries. Whenever I go to work, I always go for a walk in the cemetery. Okay? Wherever it is that is quiet, where there is nature in particular. Okay? Now Jesus himself used situations like that. He said to his disciples, look at the birds of the air. Look at the lilies of the field. He always looked at something there that is natural, and David was the same thing. He was constantly referring to nature. He sees the God in the beauty of nature. Okay, so being out there in a natural spot is nice. You know that Jesus, during his entire lifetime, right up until the end, he never said to his disciples, go out and bring people to our way. He never said that. What he did say is, look at the fields, it is ready for harvest. Okay? So there is so many things that we can contemplate on. I particularly like animals, and I like to watch shows to do with nature and things like that. There was a show that I thought was quite nice. It was after the fires last summer in the United States. They had all these fires in the national parks and all the rest of it. And they went in there with a camera to see the sort of damage. And as they were walking along, they came across this bird that was sitting next to a tree, okay? And it was completely dry out. It was completely burnt. And the reporter thought this was really curious. Why did the bird not fly? I mean, there is a fire. Why would he not fly? And he grabbed a stick and he pushed the bird to the side, and lo and behold, there is all these chicks sitting under him. The bird sacrificed his life in order to save his chicks. There is lots of things like that. The ant, whatever it is you look at in nature, it brings you to God. And it's so nice. The other thing is that we should never, ever, during our quiet time and all other times, don't take God's gift for granted. You know, and we do that all the time. This is like I still have time, don't I? Yeah. We do this all the time. It's like this guy that comes to church, and he comes to you and he says, "Look, I'm really struggling financially, and I'm having problems putting food on the table." And you say to him, "Okay, well, I'll try to help you a little bit. I'll give you $200 a month just to help you out a bit." Okay? So you give him $200 every month, and then at the end of 6 months, you meet him in church, and you hadn't given him the $200 yet, and he comes up to you and he says, "Hey, where's my money?" "What money? What are you talking about?" We do the same thing. We have no appreciation for what God gives us. We think that we can go to sleep and wake up alive, and that's normal. No, it's not normal. We wake up healthy, and that's normal. No, it's not normal. You could have had COVID. You could have died. Our whole family is around us. The house is standing. We've got security. We've got food. We open our fridges, and it's full. We think that's normal. No, it's not normal. There is so many people around the world that don't have anything to eat. Nothing. It's not normal. This is a blessing. This is a gift. We shouldn't take it for granted. We should be thankful for what we have. We should count our blessings. Even the air we breathe is a blessing. There is this, and you may have heard this story during the height of COVID-19. There is this wealthy man in the United States that went into the hospital, and they had to put him on a respirator. One day on a respirator. Okay? And then he got the bill, and they were having an interview with him, and the bill was for $8,000 for 1 day on a respirator. And this guy was standing in front of the camera crying. He was crying. And they said to him, "Why are you crying? Is it because the bill is too much?" So he said, "Oh, no, I can pay the bill. That's not the problem. The problem is that I was charged $8,000 to breathe for a day, and now I'm 50 years old, and God has given me breath all of this time, and I never said thank you. If I had to pay him back for this, it would be $250 million. We take it for granted. We don't say thank you. During our quiet time, we need to make it our aim to grow in our love for Christ. And we do that in any way possible. You know, many girls complain about the fact that their husbands don't say, "I love you." And it's not a good thing. Say it. Say it to God. "I love you." Write it on a piece of paper. "I love you." It makes a difference. You have to express what it is you feel. David says, "One thing I have desired of the Lord, and that I will seek, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord forever." It's really funny that David should say something like that. You don't desire anything else? You don't desire retribution for your enemies? You don't desire anything? Nothing. Desires one thing. And that is the most important thing, to be in the house of the Lord. I have to look at myself here. I always come to the mass late. And I think, where is that desire? Where is that desire? David used to wake up early every morning, okay, just to look for God. Finally, one of the things that we have to do is trust and hope in His promises. During our quiet time, we have to have faith, like Moses said. We have to have faith that there is a reward and we will get it. And there is nobody in the Bible which has so much hope and faith as much as Jonah. Incredible man. Incredible man. Jonah was in the belly of the fish. He was in the belly of the fish. Okay? And he had all these weeds rolling around his head. There is no way that he could survive. If I was me, I would have given up. But not Jonah. He prays. He's spending quiet time with God in the belly of the whale, in the belly of the fish. And his prayer is amazing. In Jonah 2, verse 9. This is chapter 2 of Jonah is his prayer when he is inside the belly of the fish. He says, have you got it there, Anne-Marie? Yep. He says, but I will sacrifice to you with the voice of thanksgiving. What? Sacrifice to you? From the belly of the whale? The belly of the fish? Thanksgiving? Thanksgiving for what? For being inside the great fish? Amazing hope. Amazing faith. That no matter what, God is taking care of him. He doesn't need to think. He doesn't need to worry. God is taking care. And this is something that we fall into all the time. It's a sin that we don't even think about. The Bible is very clear. Do not worry. Don't worry. But we worry all the time. Jonah didn't. We went to Abuna organized for the deacons to get together, and Bishoy was giving the talk, and something that I thought was really nice that he said, which I'd like to share with you. He said, does everybody know what the most common phrase we repeat in the Mass is? Lord have mercy. And he says in Arabic, it means, Ya Rab Erham. It comes from Raham. Now most of us think of Lord have mercy as, forgive me, I have sinned, forgive me, I have sinned. But it comes from Raham, which is the womb. He's not just asking for mercy. He's asking to be completely fulfilled. Everything. Don't need to worry about anything. Because I'm in there, I have my food, I have my warmth, I have everything exactly like Adam in paradise. I have no need for anything. And that's what we're asking for. This is what we desire for. Okay? So I'm going to finish here, but I'm just going to go over a couple of things. The most important of which is that fasting and quiet time are very important, okay? But we cannot do these without God. We have to focus on God. We have to focus on our prayers. We have to focus on our quiet time. It is not enough to just fast. Okay? And the other thing is look to the end. Look to the end. Look to the joy and pleasures that you will experience eternally with Christ. Put that in front of you. And this is your aim. Focus. Okay? Shakespeare says this phrase. He says, which is an interesting one, and he says, all of us in the world are on a play. All the world is a theater, I think, or a play. Sorry? All the world is a stage, and we each must play a part. Okay? So if you think of yourselves as actors on a stage, one of you will be a pauper, and one of you will be a prince. Okay? But it's all on a stage. And then eventually we get off the stage and we come back to the real life. But this is what we are now. We are on a stage. There is no difference between rich man and poor man. Like I said to you, I often spend time in cemeteries going around, and I think to myself, I wonder, this person here has got a really fantastic cemetery, and this person, his cemetery is really, yeah, it's just a hole in the ground. And I think, is there a difference? No difference. No difference. They're the same. Okay? Glory be to God forever. Amen. Does anybody have any questions or anything? Because Abuna is here to answer questions.
Any questions on the Nagi, guys? Thank you very much, Nagi. That was beautiful. Thank you very much. Guys, just a few announcements before we before we head out for some lovely food. It looks like they're cooking up a storm outside. We've got our usual services throughout the week, guys. Book club was on Monday nights at 7:30. They're reading the life of Anthony. Okay, so that's at 7:30 every Monday. So we'd love to see you guys there. If you'd like to buy a copy of the book, Benny has those, and he's outside if you guys need it. Bible studies on Wednesday night at 7:30 p.m. They're studying the book of Hebrews. Okay, they're up to chapter 3. The liturgies are the same: Wednesday 9 to 11, Friday 5:45 to 7:30, and this week we start Kiach praises. Okay, so throughout the month of Kiach, it's a beautiful time that we sing praises to Saint Mary. Lovely time of the year, my favorite time of the year. So it's on Saturdays at 7 to 11. Is that right, Abuna? 7 to 11 Saturday. Okay, so 7 p.m. to 11 p.m. on a Saturday. Would love to see you guys there. It's really a beautiful, beautiful time. Tonight there's a prayer meeting at 9:30 as usual. Just for the next few weeks, guys. There's Christmas carols next week at St. Abraham's. It is a paid event, so it's per sort of car that comes in. So it's if you have less than sort of 3 people, I believe it's $5 per person. Sorry, $10 per person. And then if you have a full car, it's $25 for the full car. Okay, so it's $10 per person. But if it's a full car, it's $25. They're just trying to sort out the parking and stuff over there. So just so you guys know. And that starts, I believe, at... not sure exactly what times that starts. But 6? Verena's saying 6. So if it's wrong, you guys can blame Verena. She's not very sure either. So it'll probably be around the 7 o'clock time. So that's happening next week at Macquarie Fields. So that's it. I think that's everything that's there. We just have one more announcement before we hand over to Ralph. Ralph is going to talk to us about a new service that's starting at St. Barbara's. The last announcement that I wanted to just say, guys, from now on Sunday nights, we're going to start wrapping things up a little bit earlier. So 10:45, we're going to start wrapping up things, and then we're going to leave by 11 o'clock. All right, so 10:45, there's going to be a couple of servants that are going to come around and start getting everyone to start moving, and then by 11 o'clock we have to be out of the gates. Okay, for a number of reasons, but that's just so that we can do that. Sorry, Mon just messaged me another announcement. Sorry, there's another combined Southwest Sector meeting in 2 weeks' time here. Okay, so next week is a carols at St. Abraham's, and then Southwest Sector, all the churches of the Southwest Sector. So that's St. Barbara's, and St. Barbara's feast that same day in the morning. Okay, it's going to be a very busy day here at St. Barbara's. Okay, St. Barbara's feast in the morning, so that runs, the fete runs all day, and then at night we're going to have a combined meeting with the whole Southwest sector. So all the churches from there are going to be coming here as well. So it's going to be a very action-packed day. Okay, so we'd love to see you guys here as well. And then I'll leave it to Ralph to talk to us about the new service starting here at church. It's very exciting, guys. Pay attention to what Ralph has to say. Oh, yes. And the 25th of December, sorry, guys. And the 25th of December is cancelled. Have we decided? We haven't decided yet. Yeah, we're going to be getting your guys' opinion whether or not whether the 25th we should go ahead and do a meeting. 25th is Australian Christmas and the public holidays are on, but it falls on a Sunday this year, which is very odd. So we're not sure exactly what to do, whether or not we go ahead with it or we cancel it, and so everyone can do stuff with their families if they usually do that. So we might be coming around tonight and just getting a bit of a gauge just to see what you guys think. So, well, we haven't decided yet, but stick to our socials and we'll let you guys know over the next couple of weeks as well what we're going to do. So just pay attention to what Ralph has to say.